my stepfather looked at me in the eyes. He says, if you get an abortion, you pick any college, any university you want to go to, I will pay for it every single dime. You'll never pay for anything. And I felt like I was standing in the presence of the devil. I mean, about to make a deal with him. You can't buy me. I said, no way. That was the last time I spoke to him.
Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I'm so grateful for your willingness to share your stories. I would love to hear your name and a brief introduction to how your story is connected to abortion.
My name is Jessica, and my connection to abortion is I got pregnant at 15 years old. As a means of getting out of my home, there was a lot of domestic violence and verbal abuse, mental abuse in my home, and I grew up in two households because my parents divorced at a very young age. And I just didn't have a sense of belonging, and as a way of wanting to get out of my abusive home, I thought, well, I have two options: to either commit suicide or to get pregnant. Those are two ways that I could get out of this. I was so desperate to leave that situation and didn't feel like my parents were supporting me or giving me a loving home. So I did get pregnant at 15, and I got more than I bargained for because I got pregnant with twins at 15 years old and had them at 16. But my mother and my grandmother both pressured me to have an abortion and were actually conspiring together to take me out of state to get an abortion. And they were both very much pro-choice because they themselves had had abortions in their lives as well. So they saw it as a solution, didn't want me to quote unquote ruin my life, and wanted me to finish school and all those things that a loving parent wants for their child. But my husband and I both had to fight very hard to protect our sons' lives, and we chose life, and they're now 12 years old. And so I'm very happy to be able to share that story, especially with teenagers that find themselves in these situations, obviously not because of the same circumstances, but to know that they're parents for a reason, and God gives us life, and He has the right to take it away, and no one else does.
So my name is Ron. Over 50 years ago, I coerced my wife to have an abortion. And the pain and suffering that I brought to her is something that's going to haunt me for the rest of my life. But also taking my son's life is also something that will never leave me. He'll always be in my heart. It ruined our marriage. It sent both of us into a bad place. My wife moved away, never got remarried, never had a family. For me, near alcoholism, failed relationships, single life for an awfully long time. I didn't want to go home. So I was a workaholic. I think that's one of the things that drove me, because my home was a very, very lonely place to go home to. But about 6 years ago, or 7 years ago now, I had a crisis in my life that made me take some stock in my life, like a lot of old men do. And I didn't like what I saw. I understood that something had messed up my life. I still hadn't put it all together. But by the grace of God, He finally knocked on my forehead and said, come over here now, you need to be with me. So by His grace, I finally accepted Christ for the first time, even though I'd been a practicing religious Christian, but never one of faith all my life. He finally brought me home. And now what I'm doing is I'm working to outreach to men to help bring them to hope and healing like men helped me.
My name is Yusi. Almost 30 years ago, I pressured my girlfriend into having an abortion. Regretted it. I wish I had the courage to talk to other people about it, but I was driven by fear. Looking back now, I realize that all the things that I was afraid of, they were non-issues.
I'm Roxana, and I had an abortion my last semester in college. I was dating at the time that I got pregnant, the father of my baby, and when I became pregnant, I remember reaching out to him because we were having a long distance relationship and just telling him that I thought I was pregnant, but I just remember him not really validating it, and so I was set to go back to visit him in Puerto Vallarta, and that's where I had the abortion, but he was the one that did it. And I never realized just like the repercussions of what that would cause in my life. I was never given any other information other than that to have an abortion. And when we ended the relationship, that's when I realized like what the effects of that was emotionally, and it was something that I hope that no woman has to go through or experience. I was deeply hurt, but that's what happened.
My name's Norma, and over 40 years ago, I was raped by my boyfriend, and I got pregnant. My first sexual experience was rape, and I chose life for that child. I got pregnant, and I chose life for that child. However, the trauma of the rape set me down a path of a very destructive pattern of abortion as a means of birth control. And after that, I had 6 abortions. And it wasn't till like 25 years afterwards, after I was on the verge of suicide, depression, anxiety, backaches, migraine headaches, that I heard a lady tell her story, her abortion story, and how God had healed her. And I thought, could this happen for me too? And so I picked up her book and her brochure, went to the Bible study, and God healed me that night. In one night, He healed me spiritually, physically, emotionally, and mentally. And since then, I've just given my life over to helping women who have been hurt through abortion.
Norma, did you experience any pressure when you were pregnant after the date rape?
Yes, I did. I grew up with my mom always saying, if you get pregnant, you know what to do. Back then, you know, you open up a Cosmopolitan magazine and abortion was talked about. And everyone around me was saying, oh, just, you know, I'll just get an abortion if I get pregnant, or, you know, it was just the talk. So growing up without a dad in the home, I didn't have anybody to really turn to. So when I got pregnant, when I found that I was pregnant, I wanted to place my child in adoption. The father of the baby wanted me to abort. I knew my mom would have wanted me to abort, so I did not say anything till I was 6 months pregnant. And went through the pregnancy, and that's when the abuse started. So with the father of the baby. So I just, you know, I chose life for my son, and I don't regret it. I'm so blessed that I have a son. I give all the glory to God. Yes.
1981, I was 15 years old, was born and raised in Newport Beach, California. Met a young man, did not go to my high school. He took something very special from me that was intended for my husband, that was my virginity. And shortly thereafter, I found myself pregnant, pressured into ending the life of my child. This was an abusive relationship. I was controlled by him, told what I would even eat and where to look, things of this sort. Unfortunately, I would have 3 abortions with this boy. I wish that was the end of my story, but it's not. I would go on to college in Santa Barbara Community College, met another blonde hair, blue-eyed gentleman, and I would have my 4th and final abortion with him. Pressured to end a total of 4 unborn children's lives. I too experienced post-abortive syndrome, something I knew nothing about. I didn't know what was wrong with me other than I was making decisions from a place of brokenness. And death does beget death. I just became very destructive. And so that is my connection to abortion.
I'd love to hear a little bit more from you, Jessica. I'd love to hear what your experience was with other people. You mentioned, for example, Jessica, your family pressuring you not to have your babies. Can you share more about what that experience was like and why you felt this confidence in rejecting that pressure?
Yeah, like I said, I was looking to become pregnant so that I could get out of my house. And so when we went to our first ultrasound, I was 8 weeks pregnant, and I remember it as if it was yesterday. And they told me, "You're having twins," and I remember everyone in the medical office was just awed and just coming to ask me, "Oh my gosh, you're having twins? How old are you?" And it was just this obsession with, or I think fascination with, a 15-year-old being pregnant with twins, which is not something that happens every day. I had always in my mind been pro-choice in the sense where I'd say to others, do what you feel is necessary, but I personally would never have an abortion. And so when I found out that I was having twins, I thought to myself, wow, is God cursing me because I want to leave my home? That was really a thought that I had. Thankfully, like I said, my husband was very supportive, but I remember when we decided to tell my family, because it was my family we were worried about, not my husband's. They were very pro-life, so that was a blessing on its own. But my mother and my grandmother, I remember they were just so angry. My grandmother even walked out of the room when we told everyone that I was pregnant with twins, and I even showed them the ultrasound, and I was super excited, scared, but very excited. And just to see them walk out of the room and be that angry with me really hurt my feelings. To know that my parents didn't want to support me, except my father did. My father, because he remembered, and I didn't know prior to that day, but my father told me, "I don't want you to have an abortion because I saw how much it hurt your mother, and I regret that she had that abortion, and I don't want the same to happen to you because I'm his only daughter." So him and I share a very special connection. So to hear that from my father was very comforting. My grandmother kept me locked in her back room because her and my mother, as I had mentioned earlier, were co-conspiring to take me to Oregon to have the abortion. And I remember overhearing them talk on the phone, and my grandma was looking at ticket prices and wanted to leave the next day. My husband and I both had to fight very hard to protect our son's lives. So I was able to get a hold of a phone in the middle of the night because they took away my phone, they took away the computers, everything. I called them in the middle of the night and I said, "They're going to take me to Oregon to have an abortion. I need you to come get me right now." He came in the middle of the night. It was about 1 a.m. And he took me, and I think it took for us to do that for them to realize that we're not giving up, that we're not going to have an abortion, and that we're going to have our children and start our life. And when everyone thought my life was ending because I was pregnant, to me it was just beginning.
I was just going to ask you, do you have any regrets?
I don't. It was very difficult. I'm not going to lie. I don't remember the first year of my twins because I was so sleep deprived and probably went weeks without showering at one point. But I don't regret it at all. My children are the biggest joy. And now knowing what women were created for and to be so nurturing and loving, and I enjoy motherhood. And I want other women to know that motherhood is not the end of your life. It brings fulfillment. It brings purpose.
In your case, Jessica, it sounds like your boyfriend was fighting for your twins.
Yeah, he was. He was very supportive from the moment I found out I was pregnant. Thanks be to God, we have 13 years of marriage now, and 4 children in total together.
You said that your dad was the one that supported you having your babies. Mm-hmm. My work is to try to reach men to help them with healing post-abortion. But the other part that haunts me and drives me is that men have a place in this world in terms of saving babies' lives. Your father was unique in some respects in today's culture. He fought for your babies. And I keep thinking that if men understood this, especially the ones that have had abortions, that what they can heal from and then speak, that they might be able to impact future fathers or other fathers to do what your father did. There's a place for men in this battle. I think your story and that piece of it may be more powerful than what you can even imagine for men to listen to.
I'm a big reconcile guy, the resurrection. The fact that God can redeem everything and everyone is my thing. Second chances, right? Listening to you talk about your dad, and it sounds like your mom and him had an abortion, and he saw the impact it had on her, and to protect his daughter, he encouraged you to choose life.
Yeah.
That is extremely powerful, right? What your dad did, like Ron said, is extremely powerful.
Thank you. I agree. And I'm so grateful for my father and his support. And he's a great grandfather. He absolutely loves our children. I did want to add something that I think is super important because it goes with the pressure that I felt. My stepfather, who I did not get along with very well, and he was the main reason why I wanted to leave my home, because he was very abusive towards my mother and eventually towards me. And he reaches his hand out to me to give me like a handshake, and he says, "If you abort your babies, I will pay. You pick any college, any university you want to go to. I will pay for it, every single dime. You'll never pay for anything." And I felt like I was standing in the presence of the devil. I mean, about to make a deal with him. And I said, "No way. You can't buy me." I said, "No way." That was the last time I spoke to him. That was something that really pushed me even more to affirm that I was making the right choice of choosing life.
What is it like for you, Roxana, and for you, Hallie, to hear, other stories here, especially from Norma and from Jessica, about their experiences with pressure and abortion?
There's a connection because when I thought I was pregnant and I shared this with my boyfriend, I really confided in him because he was the doctor. He's a very intelligent man. And it's just amazing how some of the same tactics that Planned Parenthood used were used in that moment, because I remember he had to check how far along I was, and then he took me to the site where he was doing his residency, and he had his ultrasound tech friend there. But when I went in there, everything was dark. I was never able to see my son. The ultrasound screen was turned away. So I wasn't given the opportunity to hear the heartbeat. I remember him pacing around, and it's a moment that's supposed to be joyful. It's a beautiful moment because it's like the first time you're seeing your baby. But for me, it was just a lot of mystery. I was really isolated. I never told anyone. None of my friends knew. It was only until after the fact, and so I can relate to you all in the sense that there was this pressure, but it's for me, it's really felt just alone, feeling alone.
On that note, feeling alone, I'm just thinking back. I don't remember any of my friends finding themselves pregnant as teenagers. I'm thinking about pressure. Planned Parenthood did a great job pressuring me, moving me along very quickly, in the process. So you don't have an opportunity to maybe ask questions or change your mind or say, is this the best decision for me? It was almost like a robotic process for me. To this day, I ask myself, why did I not have enough wherewithal to say, what can I do to avoid this again? Instead of just continuing this awful, the separation from God, because sin separates us from God, and then I'm separated from my children. Physically, my children are separated from me. Wow, I'm just sitting here, some things are coming to me for the first time I've never really thought about before. It's really thought-provoking. But yes, pressure from the boyfriends, but same pressure from Planned Parenthood. They're not going to give you an option.
Your comment about feeling like you were alone, I can't help but think that that was one of the things that my wife felt when I was coercing her. That hit me really hard, really, really hard when you mentioned that.
I'm curious for the men on this side of the table, your experience of the abortions that your wives or girlfriends had. What was your mindset going into that? Did you feel a pressure externally to then pressure the girl or the woman to have the abortion? What was going through your mind?
There were layers with what I was thinking when my wife told me that she was pregnant. We were in our living room when she told me this. I was sitting on the floor and looking up at her on the couch. What was really the first thing in my head was that this wasn't our plan. This is too soon. We were going to start our family 6 or 7 years later. Once we got ahead financially, my wife was going to go back to college and get her teaching degree. All these things were what was first on my mind. But I got cold about it. I just really got cold. I never hugged her when we were talking about this and so on. So I applied pressure in a kind of a cold, mechanical way. Now, no one would have been able to convince me of that at the time. I was just trying to fix a problem. What was terrible, though, is that the thought of my son or daughter never came in my mind. One of the reasons, though, is that supposedly it was just some of the mother's fetal cells. Wasn't alive, and so on. At that time, back in the 70s, Norma, back in the 70s, there wasn't even hardly any sonograms around that we could get a hold of. And there was no clinic that we could go to, pregnancy clinic as well. Kind of all came together so that I could have this discussion with my wife to pressure her with logic just to kind of keep to this decision that the best thing to do would be stay on plan. Go ahead and have the abortion. He told us it was no big deal. It was a D&C, wouldn't last long, be over, no complications. So those were the things that were on my mind at the time. The first thing that came in my mind again was, this wasn't our plan. I had to fix the problem.
So I grew up in a single-parent home, and I remember my mom having a conversation with me when she figured out that I was probably sexually active, something to the effect of, you better don't get nobody pregnant or bring a child home. But whatever it was, all I heard was the things she didn't say. And I just looked at the loopholes. And the loophole was she never said don't have sex. And so, I wasn't worried about it. My girlfriend at the time, I knew why she didn't want to be pregnant and why she couldn't. But again, we didn't do anything to avoid that. And so it happened. Me supporting her was extremely important, and that wasn't there. We made a plan. I dropped her off. I picked her up, and I realized after how sad she was, and it did impact us, right? And for me, the part that saddens me is the fact that even as that pregnancy came up and we made the decision and all of that, I was thinking about me. I was thinking about her. We were thinking about our families, but I don't have any memory of me thinking about what this child would be, how this child's life would be. It don't just go away. You have to deal with it. So something similar happened. I'm married. We have 2 kids. We just bought our first home. And I remember my wife coming to me and saying, she just has this big smile on her face. And she said, what do you think about us having another kid? And I crushed her. I could see the blood draining out of her face as I tell her all the reasons why we should not have another child. Keep in mind, this was the abortion. This was a different scenario. I was married, we have kids, but it was the same attitude. It was the same mindset. What happened is we ended up being pregnant, unplanned, and had a miscarriage. And what God revealed to me was I did not have it in my heart to love another person. That was my struggle. Again, through his grace, he blessed us with a beautiful daughter. But that was the thing that really bothered me, is the fact that I never thought of that person during that process.
Listening to both of them, gentlemen, something happens, right? You're never the same. Your heart becomes hardened. And I heard you say that, and I heard you say that, and that happened to me as well. Why am I not compassionate like other women that I know? Why am I so cold? Why can't I connect with them? And I felt like a terrible person because I couldn't do that. But it's that heart of stone. So abortion changes you so terribly. And it goes for men too, right? They're not the ones that are actually going in the abortion clinic, but it's your child that the life was taken, and we're all responsible.
The idea to protect women. I mean, I don't remember anybody walking up to me and said, you know, you're not a man if you're not protective. So don't even think about messing around with any women if you don't want to put their life above yours. I would die for my wife now. Back then, it wasn't even in my head. No one took us aside as young men and said, look, if you believe in God, this is what you need to be. I missed that boat. I'm on that boat now.
You know, we're taught, you know, just protect yourself. You've got to get your career. You've got to do what you have to do, and nothing can stand in the way. So it's just society has taught us that, is just to, you know, look out for number one, you know. And so even in the church or wherever, you know, people are just not wanting to take responsibility for women and themselves.
My mom, she was a virgin when she married my dad, and she had 4 daughters. She remained silent about her purity. And as a result, my mom and dad lost 7 children to abortion between me and my other sisters. That wasn't going to be my story. I've been very open and honest with my 3 children and say, this is my story. You do not want to go down this road. And the importance of purity is protection, and it's powerful.
Yes, I had an abortion. I am well aware of the things that I have done, especially the hard things that I've done to impact people negatively. I don't want my children to make my mistakes. I want to be the foundation that they can look at their dad, see the kind of person he was, and be better.
All this pain led to me opening up 2 pregnancy care centers. God did that with a healed heart, with a healed person. I felt so much pressure I wanted to please everybody. I didn't want to be a disappointment to my friends, my family. But look what God did so many more years later. But that's God, you know, that's what he does with a healed person.
Thank you all so much for sharing your stories. It's such a gift. Thank you.
Thank you, Lila. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hearing the men speak about the regrets, being the ones that have facilitated the women choosing to end the life of their children, that was huge for me.
The part that hit me the most was a young lady that had indicated that her father encouraged her to keep her babies. And men need to come forward to do the same.
It was incredibly rewarding to hear everyone's stories, and I'm really hoping that those that are watching learn something new and help defend life.